Alrighty, everybody. I am so excited, Dan, to have you on Hey Docs. Thanks so much for being a part of the show.
My pleasure. Yeah, great to be on with you, Joe.
So, one of the things that I love to do, in case somebody maybe doesn't know who you are or what your role is in OrthoFi, I'm wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into our ortho industry, and a little bit about your role at OrthoFi.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dan Santiago. I am Vice President and Head of Customer Success for OrthoFi. It's going to be 5 years in October. Time really does fly.
Yes.
Based here in Denver, Colorado, where OrthoFi headquarters is. Uh, I have a background in the outsource technology industry. So I spent 18 years at a company that most people haven't heard of called ServiceSource. It was a startup based in San Francisco, made it big, and lived in San Francisco for several years and then moved to Dublin, Ireland, and set up our European office in Dublin. Spent about 5 years there and then moved to Denver with my family just over 7 years ago.
Perfect. That's great. And I love it. You're the customer satisfaction. It's all on you. Customer success. It's all on you, right?
It sure is. I get the privilege of talking to our customers probably sometimes in their proudest moments, but more often than not in their most frustrated moments. And I get to interact and be with them. And in all seriousness, we have a great customer base, very loyal and very patient customer base. I think I mentioned this to you at one of the conferences we were at. It's always good when they don't know who I am because that things are going pretty well.
Exactly. So let's talk just a little bit about OrthoFi. I definitely feel like OrthoFi has met a need in our industry as we have watched, I think, offices progress. And I feel like we have really been moving away from the very traditional, tried and true. You have to have a financial coordinator. You have to have like all of these core roles. Not that they aren't still needed, but I'm definitely finding and seeing that we are moving more towards what I'll call outsourced roles within the practice. And I would love to get your perspective, being the person who really is the backbone to making sure that clients of OrthoFi have success. If you can talk about some of the things that you see help make practices successful when they are looking to maybe outsource their financial role from insurance to patient accounts. Can you dive into that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, that is part and parcel of the OrthoFi value proposition, and not just OrthoFi, the company, the OrthoFi, the product, and also OrthoBank, the product. And we'll talk, more about that.
Yes, yes.
Is really about being a tool for practices to help manage their revenue cycle. And sometimes this comes across, sometimes it doesn't, but we don't view ourselves as a replacement of anyone in the
Yes.
practice, right? We are
Yes.
there to be
Yes.
a tool to help enable the process and to hopefully make life easier for the practice and make
Mhm.
it a better experience for the patient, right?
Mhm.
And allow them a much easier experience from that first exam all the way through to that last payment. We really view ourselves as a tool that the practice can utilize to help make that whole process much more seamless and easy.
Yeah, that's great. And I completely agree with you on that. I know when I'm working with clients, if we're using a third party company, OrthoFi, OrthoBank, or some of the others out there, I always tell my doctors and we set up systems that we have to still monitor what's going on. It isn't out of sight, out of mind. And I feel like that is part of the success package, right? Is you can't just say, oh, it's like the gym membership that I don't use. Yeah, I paid for that 3 years ago. And yeah, I think I'm still paying for it. I'm still haven't lost the weight that I'm looking for, but I also haven't made it to the gym, right? And I feel like it's similar, right? Like we have to have processes in place to help make sure that we are staying on top of the accounts, even though that is what you guys are doing. There's still this component to accountability for the offices, I'll say, in helping hold OrthoFi and OrthoBank accountable too, right? Do you have suggestions on that a little bit or thoughts on what you've seen that helps practices be more successful when maybe they're setting some of that up versus ones that do not?
Yeah, no, it's a great question and something that, again, we really try to impress upon,
Hmm.
particularly new customers, but even folks that have been with us for a long time is this is not a throw it over the fence scenario. This is not a, oh, great, I now OrthoFi is here, so I don't have to worry about this. It's still your business, right? It's
Hmm.
still, we view our customers, again, as small business owners, which they are. And we also view our technology and our managed services as a tool to help enable their success. But by no means are we taking over all these things on our own, right? And so
Hmm.
I guess the first thing for a new practice is patience, right? This is change management 101. This can be challenging, right? This
Yes.
can be the OrthoFi method, the way we get the results we do. It's tried and true, but it's oftentimes different than what a practice is doing
Hmm.
today. And again, there's always that knee jerk reaction to say, oh, this isn't working or this is too difficult. And again, my advice, having now seen this for 5 years, is please be patient. The ones that are patient, the ones that are able to roll with it and understand that there's a method to the madness, if you will, that's how you get to the other side. That's how you start to see those results. The other piece too would be back to what I said is don't think of this as a labor replacement or that it's going to take the place of anyone in your practice. It's more about how do we utilize those folks in different
Hmm.
roles that
Yes.
are going to help enable the solution to be effective. And that's where a big part of the customer success team, which is our ortho success managers, they can be there every step of the way to help with those conversations around how do we take who was maybe a office manager or some other role in the business, and how do we repurpose those folks to help OrthoFi be more successful?
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about existing practices because I think that's probably, I love you said change management 101. I think the hardest thing, it's fairly easy for my startups, my docs that are getting going right from the beginning. I always say, put the systems in place in the beginning and it's just part of your practice. But our existing docs and our existing practices and our existing team members, I think that's where it gets we got emotions, it's a little bit sticky. There's a lot of work to do when you're looking at that. So, I'd love for you to maybe give us some ideas or things to think about if an existing practice is saying, "Hey, I've had this role or I'm really looking to make some changes." What's some advice you might give an existing practice if they were to start moving in this direction? Because I feel like there's probably some cleanup that has to happen on the front end and there's some buy-in from the team. And when I'm working with
Yeah.
existing, I'm saying, "Hey, you've got to have one person that's going to be committed to at least a minimum learning this process so that then they can talk to it to other people." So I don't want to I don't want it to just be about what I think. I'd love to hear from you. What are you seeing with existing practices that may be moving in this direction versus the startups that seem to be a little bit easier?
Yeah, no, it's a something that we encounter all the time. And again, it goes back to change is hard. And the status quo oftentimes is the biggest inhibitor to growth and
Mhm.
success in terms of what got you here may not be able to get you where you want to go. And
Yes.
that isn't always the case. And uh, certainly there are practices that have done extremely well without OrthoFi and will continue to do well. For
Mhm.
those that are looking for growth, for those that are looking to expand, for those that are looking to invest in some technology to help make some of these processes and some of these things easier, I think we have a really compelling story and backed up by results that we've had over the last 10 years. And if that's the path you're looking to go down with your practice, I think it's worth checking out and worth exploring and then being open to the changes that need to come to get there. And it goes back to your gym analogy, right? That membership that's an important piece to it, but actually using it and doing what they tell you to do, that's how you get the results, right? And so I wish there were silver bullets. I wish there were panaceas. I wish there were things that were easy. In my experience, it just doesn't happen that way. And so I think back to if you are an existing practice, certainly as a doctor and a business owner, you can make some of these decisions. Just say, listen, I sounds great. I want to do this. I would strongly encourage getting some of that buy-in from your staff, making sure that
Mhm.
everyone understands the why behind you would do a change like this. It's just going to make the change management component that much easier if we're able to not spring this decision on them or not out of the blue. All of a sudden we show up saying, hey, we're going to change this, we're going to change that. Folks, whatever role they're in, they want to understand the why behind things. They want to
Yeah.
understand if we're going to make these changes and we're going to do this, what's in it for me, right?
Mm.
Or what is my role in terms of how I'm going to help practice be more successful?
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do through our onboarding and implementation process is really help steward that. But again, we can't do it all ourselves. And that's why we view these as partnerships. We try really hard. We don't want to be viewed as a vendor. We want to be viewed as a partner. And building those relationships and changing with the practice is what we want to do in
Yeah, that's great. So when we think about that transition and how do we make it easier on practices? Like some of the things that are coming top of mind to me, like I would think, and this sounds so basic, but I will tell you, I would think if a practice has insurance that you guys are going to be taking over for them, they probably need to know what insurance companies, right? they're
Yeah,
they're actually a
it
part of.
helps. It
Yeah.
helps.
Or what do those fee schedules look like? Or which patients are we going to hand over or not? And again, I guess I'm just going back to it can feel so overwhelming. And I know you guys have got a really good process, but I'm just wondering, are there any other additional things that, a practice, if they were like, okay, how would I do this? What should I be thinking about in helping make that transition easier? It might even be updating computers. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. I feel like it's like an onion. You unpack one little thing and then you're like, oh, there's another little layer. Oh, there's another little layer.
100%. Uh, it's one of those things where each practice is pretty different, right? And each
Mhm.
practice comes with their own sort of history of whether or not they've been adverse to change in the past or whether they've been more prone to wanting to do things manually versus adopting technology.
Mm.
I always hate the answer, it depends, but it really does depend in some
Mhm.
cases in terms of looking at from a technology or from an adoption maturity. Where has this practice been? What's their disposition as it comes to embracing and adopting some new things? And so that's again where our implementation and adoption teams really earn their keep, right? Is helping
Mhm.
practices answer some of those questions and then trying to help them with that journey, helping them understand, okay, I got to get ready to invest here, or I got to get ready to change
Yes.
things there. It's a process, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there's no switch. There's no overnight. You go from paper claims and paper everything to digital. Like it's a process and
Yes.
insurance. I don't hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but it's hard. And sometimes it
Yes.
seems like it's hard on purpose, right?
Yes.
And just when you think you've figured it out, they change the rules, right? And so
Mhm.
that predates OrthoFi and that'll continue on in perpetuity, right? But we do have folks that have been in the industry for a very long time that are as good as it gets in terms of understanding and being able to anticipate some of those challenges. And we bring all that to bear as part of our solution to help practices figure that out and understand what's going to be best for them, again, to hit those goals of growth, hit those goals of expanding their business.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I really have appreciated about OrthoFi and OrthoBank is it isn't just like we're talking a lot about accounts management and that,
Yeah.
but it isn't just that. You could, going back to what you were saying goal wise, if you said, hey, I want to grow my practice, and maybe that's adjusting how we do our downs and our monthlies. That goes into when we talk about like this bigger picture of how OrthoFi, OrthoBank kind of helps a practice. And I think you've said it multiple times. Technology is that component and that piece that you guys are bringing, in my opinion, to the practices. And I'm wondering a little bit if you can just talk about maybe some of those different pinch points in a practice that you guys are able to maybe work with or speak to in regard to what technology does for those pinch points?
Yeah, I think the first one, and again, this is again part and parcel of OrthoFi's value prop is really around that fee presentation. Being, I think, among the first to introduce that payment slider and
Yeah.
all that information pre-populated, ready to go to help increase the likelihood that patient's going to say yes to treat that same day and make that informed decision, understanding what insurance is going to bring to bear, how much can I put down, and then can I afford that monthly payment? All of that, I think, historically has been awkward and a bit clumsy because it's difficult to get all that information ready to go in
Mhm.
one place. And so I think that's, again, where OrthoFi kind of really built a lot of its reputation, at least at first, in terms of being able to that first pinch point, which is that fee presentation piece,
Mhm.
but then also really trying to help make and facilitate the payment plans for the patient on the back end. And that's where both OrthoFi and OrthoBank have been pioneers in terms of helping patients be able to automate that, get their HSA cards or get their debit cards, make sure that they're on file and setting up those payment plans on a monthly basis so that it just comes out like clockwork. And again, it all comes back to that affordability piece, making sure
Yes.
that they're not overextending themselves or getting into a situation where it's going to be difficult for them. And really, technology underpins all of this. But from our perspective, it's not obviously the whole answer. And that's where the managed services piece comes in and all the work we're doing behind the scenes to facilitate those patient payments. And as we talked about, at least in the OrthoFi side, working with insurance and trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
maximize those payments.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have come to rely on a lot as a consultant is, and we haven't even talked about this, is the data that you guys have.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is so cool to me about what OrthoFi and OrthoBank are doing right now is that it isn't just a technology piece, but there's data. As a consultant, when I tell my docs, when I coach differently on a startup and an existing practice on how we do our downs and how we do our monthlies, and it has been wonderful. I've been doing this for 17 years now in the consulting side of it. And it has been so great to be able to have data that backs up what I coach on. And to know that we are safe to, in many cases, now, again, I don't take a cookie cutter approach. So every practice is a little bit different, just like you guys. But to be able to say, hey, we're okay if we have to spread those payments out a little bit. If we're an existing practice and we're really working on certain things. And I just appreciate that you guys have got the data to show us that delinquency rates are low and we're not maybe the practices of the early 1990s where it was a totally different market and we didn't have the data to show us. And I don't know if you can speak to any of that and the analytics that you guys have on the backside, but I think that's just one more really cool piece that I don't think gets enough attention.
I completely agree, Jill. And this is where being, at least I get really excited
Yes.
because as much as OrthoFi has brought to bear in this area, I think we've only scratched the surface
Mhm.
of what we can actually do to help our
Mhm.
practices and help the industry really, because of all this data that we sit on that we've collected over the last 10 plus
Mm.
years. Certainly our customers have come to, I think, appreciate and really leverage the reporting that we provide within the application.
Mhm.
One of the things that we're working hard to do is to try to really establish that data across a much broader remit to help not just practices that are working with us, but practices that maybe are thinking about working with us, help push them over the edge to be able to show and compare them to their peer set, whether it be demographically, whether it be across any number of size, location, demographics, et cetera. Really be able to understand not just how they're performing today, but what can they expect in terms of growth,
Mhm.
right? What can they do to push
Yes.
themselves to that next level? And that's where, again, I get really excited because we haven't really even scratched the surface there yet in terms of, again, borrowing a term from my technology background, we haven't weaponized this data, right? And
Yes.
again,
Yes.
not necessarily in a negative way, but more so in terms of what can this unlock? What can this do to help push through complacency and to get to getting rid of those plateaus where things just seem to
Mhm.
be ticking over and ticking over. There's the potential for more, but you're just not sure how to get there. That's really what this data and analytics can unlock is being able to come up with strategies on how you get to the breakthrough performance. How do you get to uh,
Right.
experiencing even higher highs, right? And that's where like I said, I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with the team here as well as industry consultants at large and other organizations where we all have a vested interest in mining this really important information that we've got access to.
Yeah, I'm just like you. I'm a data geek as well, and so I'm watching you get fired up talking about it, and I'm like, oh, this is exactly where I live too. It's in the details of it, and being able to pull all that together and then build on that, and for each individual practice, really, I'd love that.
Absolutely, and it's at its basic terms, it's also about storytelling, right? It's
Mhm.
how do you interpret this information? How do you break it down into bite-sized, digestible pieces that tell the story that you're trying to tell, right? So that
Yeah,
story could be growth and expansion, right? That story could be, I just want to understand how I limit my exposure in certain demographics where, there's a higher incidence of DR and having delinquency, right?
Mhm.
There's any
Mhm.
number of things. And I think this is where all the data is there, right? It just needs to be cultivated. It needs to be interpreted in a way that tells the right story for whoever wants to listen and whoever wants to understand how this can impact their business.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to circle back around because I know one of the things that I had learned and I really have appreciated is that you guys also take a little bit of a more individual approach to region, right? As you guys are setting up teams, you actually have teams that are set up by the region correctly. So if a doc is saying, hey, I'm going to come on, but I've got this random insurance that we're going to be billing or whatnot. Can you talk to that a little bit and how you guys are not servicing just everybody as a whole that we only it's one size answer fits all or one answer to this or that, because I thought this was really unique and I appreciated that you guys took the time to understand that what my doc's in Maine and maybe the way things happen in that region are going to be maybe very different than insurance companies to the way things are done. Can you talk to that? And I know I'm throwing you a curveball, but it just rolled right into my head. And I was
Yeah.
like, because it goes to the technology, it goes to the data behind things. So I'll let you take the floor on that one.
Yeah. No, and again, this is an evolution of scale, right? So
Mhm.
obviously, as OrthoFi has continued to grow and able to expand our footprint within the US, and have preponderance of practices that we work with in these different geographies, it's allowed us to expand our coverage from our ortho success managers. And one of the things that we saw early on was that there's differences in the way insurance companies behave in the Northeast versus the
Mhm.
Southeast and so we it wasn't easy, and certainly it took, like I said, the ability to have additional scale. But what we have done is we've developed what we call pods, so regional groups of folks, not just on the account management or ortho success side, but all the way through our operations teams. So all the folks that do the eligibility checks, all the folks that actually process the claims and do all that work, they sit within these regional pods that are captained by the ortho success managers, and we allow them to focus on those geographic areas and become expert in the
I love
nuances of how
this.
things get done. And so that has been a great partnership with our operations and managed services teams
Mhm.
to really be able, and again, it all comes back to this is where the customers were driving this, right? They
Yes.
wanted to understand the nuances. They wanted to be able to call their ortho success manager and get the why behind something was happening. And so we struggled candidly for a
Mhm.
while there
Mhm.
by taking a bit more of a one size fits all approach. That's just not how this business works. Another good example of that is we have a completely dedicated ortho success organization and dental success, or sorry, ortho services organization and dental services
Mhm.
organization. We have a completely unique team that services those customers, right? OSO and DSO have become and will continue to become a larger and larger presence in the
Mhm.
industry. And those folks show up differently, particularly as it relates to how they work with OrthoFi. And we've acknowledged that, and we've invested in teams of folks that are dedicated to how they do business and really try to make that experience a smooth one for the customer.
Yeah. And that's something I have really appreciated about you and watching the company grow and come to fruition over the years is I think just being able to say, "Hey, we are recognizing that we need to change. We are recognizing that we need to do it a little bit differently." And I think in general that's just the evolutionary path that hopefully we are all taking within our businesses. But I can tell you that I have seen big success with my clients when those pods went into place. And knowing that, again, when you think of you as an extension of the team, I want to know that if we're calling in and talking about the union's insurance account and you've got somebody that actually understands the union's insurance account for that region, what a difference that conversation is for the team member in the office and for, I'm sure, the OrthoFi pod team member that's talking to them versus maybe the way it was done in the past where you're talking about something and everything just isn't quite connecting.
Well, exactly. And there's just like when you get introduced to someone for the first time and you have to explain who you are, where you're from, all those things, having that shorthand and being able to
Yes.
just assume that everyone will meet you at that place where they understand those
Mhm.
particulars, it just makes you that much more efficient and you get to the answer faster. And
Yeah.
again, that's always our goal. Again, this is not an easy business, right? No one said it was.
No.
And no one's gonna cry for us that it's complex, and that's why we're here, right? Our
Yeah.
our sort of charter is to try to bring some order to the chaos and try to help, and that isn't always achievable, but it's certainly something that we strive to do.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to totally switch us gears here. We've been talking a lot about OrthoFi, and I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about OrthoBank because I feel like there's this rumbling that's been out there that maybe OrthoBank is being sunsetted or it's no longer just maybe that part of the company is going away or whatnot. And I knew having you on the show, I would be able to get the tea on this. So
Absolutely. Yes. No, I'm glad we're getting the chance to talk about this. I can unequivocally say that that is not the case. OrthoBank is not going anywhere. In fact, it continues to be a strategic part of the portfolio of products that we're developing. So I can understand where a bit of that came from, right? OrthoBank has been around for 3 decades and pioneered this space around, particularly around the patient collection and really making sure that
yes.
we're able to affordably maintain those payment plans with the patients. And obviously, OrthoFi being a bit of a younger company. And when that acquisition happened, there was a lot of questions and rumblings of what this is going to mean and what's going to happen. But really, it comes back to what I said earlier around our efforts here are really to meet the practice or the customer where they want to be met and offer a portfolio of products whereby the OrthoFi solution is pretty robust. And back to that change management piece, if you're going to see the results, you're going to have to be willing to adopt new ways of doing things. And not every
Yes.
practice is willing to do that, right? And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have access to tools like OrthoBank that make the patient collection side of the business much more streamlined and much more effective. So that was never our intent was to do anything but enhance and hopefully bring maybe perhaps a little bit more investment and bring some of that technology forward. But it was never our intention to do anything other than support that product. And so
Yeah.
want to make sure that's very clear. And that's again underpins our strategy here, which is to let the customer buy the way they want to buy. And also, if after a few years or whatever the case may be with OrthoPay, they might decide that, hey, I actually would like some help with our insurance, or I would like to think about maybe outsourcing more of this. That's where the OrthoFi solution could come to play. But
Right.
absolutely, it's not going anywhere. And it's a big part of our strategy and will continue to be moving forward.
And I appreciate you saying that because I think the thought out there, I get asked this a lot, is it one or the other? Is it is it OrthoBank or OrthoFi? Or really what's the difference? Is one of them doing merchant services and one of them doing ACH? Is one of them doing I feel like there's a
Yeah.
lot of confusion around how do the products that have come together work in conjunction with each other. And if I am I somehow being disloyal if I've been in ortho if I've been with OrthoFi, but I really think I want to do some of this. So would you mind talking to that a little bit? Because I know these are the questions I get asked a lot.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think just the biggest difference between the products is the insurance component, that revenue cycle management piece. And
Mm.
our CEO and founder, Dave Turnin, if he said it once, he said it 1,000 times. The best, worst mistake we ever made was getting involved in this insurance thing. And he recounts the story where folks brought this to him and he basically was like, doesn't sound too hard. And famous last words, right?
Exactly.
He's probably aged an eternity in that time, right? And
Does he still
but
have hair?
however, he does. God bless him. I don't know how he pulled that off, but no. And in all seriousness, it has been. I've lost my hair as a result. No, I'm kidding. But it is a struggle
Mhm.
that part of the business because, as I said earlier, just when you think you've got it figured out, the goalpost moves and it changes and it adapts. And it brings a lot of frustration, not just to us, but to the practices, but it also brings a lot of joy when you can make
Mhm.
things easier. And so that piece of it, I think, is the biggest difference in the products. I think both companies came to similar conclusions around how do we help on the front end, making
Mhm.
sure we're bringing order to the fee presentation and helping folks understand affordability and having slider tools and other things. Both companies had options there. And then on the back end with the facilitating the patient payments, both companies have solutions there. It was really that insurance component. And as again, back to as we thought about bringing these two companies together, it was really about allowing the practices to buy the way they want to buy and have the alternative to say, hey, if I'm just interested in the front end
Mhm.
on the fee presentation and I think I can manage the insurance myself, then OrthoBank is probably a better solution for you.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
want to have the more involved piece around RCM, then OrthoFi is going to make sense. And that really is, I hope that's not an oversimplification, but
I
that's
think it's
really
great.
how we look at it is that big difference between the two is the insurance component.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I think actually I really appreciate you taking the time to simplify that for us. And I am sure that I've had some listeners that have just had that little light bulb moment go on and be like, okay, I get it now. Because, again, I know I get asked the question a lot. There still seems to be some confusion around that. So I really appreciate you just taking the time to simplify that. And again, just going off of I appreciate what you guys are doing and taking the time to listen to what your consumers, what your docs out there are asking for and looking for and not making it be a one size fits all product. You guys, I feel what I have seen with my docs is they can pick and choose as they're going along. If they choose to use the slider, great. If they choose not to use the slider, great. If they want to use patient intake, great. If they want to, like, they can choose what they're doing and then build on it, maybe even as they feel like they're ready to start building on it.
Absolutely. And obviously you work a lot with startups, right?
Hmm.
And again, that's the beginning of their journey, right? And they may have some ideas as to how much they want to be managing within their four walls and how much they want to use a
Hmm.
partner like OrthoFi or anything to help them get there.
Yeah.
And so it's really about trying to be as viable an option as we can be for whatever choice gets made. Again, not trying to over engineer this or make this a commercial, but it also comes down to what sort of results are you looking
Hmm.
right? And I think again, it's back to the gym analogy. If you're going to go and you're going to do cardio for an hour every day, you're probably going to get different results than the person who goes and doesn't make it past the snack bar. But
Right.
again, it all comes down to what are you looking to get out of it, and what is it that you're invested in doing to make yourself successful.
Yeah, that's great. I've been looking forward to having you on because this is, exactly what I wanted to get from you and knowing that you are the guy that's leading the teams that are helping our docs to success. So as we wrap up here, I'd love to pick your brain just a little bit. If you had, I don't know, 3 or so, like, takeaways where you're like, "Boy, Jill didn't cover this," or something that I think that doctors really need to be thinking about or thinking about pieces of advice on implementation. or training even, or just technology in general? What do you think? What do you want to leave us
Yeah,
with?
I mean, again, I think change is hard, right? And nothing worthwhile comes easily. And we're here to help support and grow with our customers. And if anyone out there that listens to this is an OrthoFi customer and you've had some challenges or struggles, please reach out to your Ortho Success Manager. Please reach out to me directly. We're here to help. We're here to support you. And again, we understand that this is just like anything else. It's a life cycle. Things move and change, and we aspire to be moving and changing with you, but we can't always anticipate challenges or issues. So please reach out, let us help. I guess would be a long-winded first one
Hmm.
there. Um, but also there's a lot of macroeconomic things in play, right? There's a bit of an uncertain time where everyone's been talking about recession and this and that, and the economy still seems strong. And what do I do? And how do I? And so again, it's two or three heads are always better than one. And
Mhm.
I think we have a rich repository of data like we talked about, and are getting better and better every day at how to utilize that. So again, whether you're a customer or not, we love to talk about this stuff, right? We
Mhm.
love to be thought leaders in the industry. And so even if maybe this isn't the right time, reach out and again, just keep your sort of ear to the ground in terms of what's new and different in the industry. And certainly the wonderful community of consultants that are out there as well. These are
Mhm.
folks that are really smart and knowledgeable about this industry. And it's always good to get different opinions and
Mhm.
really explore what other people are seeing and doing in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's great. Great advice for sure. So, as we wrap up here, I would love it if somebody wants to get a hold of you, wants to find out more about OrthoFi, OrthoBank. What's the best way they can do that?
Yeah. So I'll just give my email address. So it's dan.santiago@orthofi.com. So feel free to email me and I'll get right back in touch with you. Startmoresmiles.com is our website. So that's where you can go. And again, get an introduction to all the wonderful things we do. And, there'll be contact information if you'd like to speak to someone about an overview and get a more in-depth understanding of the products we offer. Those are two great ways to get in touch.
Yeah, that's great. And I just want to put this out there. You guys have a conference that you put out every year. You want to talk to that just a moment? Because what I love about this, I'm just going to throw this out there. I love continuing ed is you don't necessarily have to be an OrthoFi or OrthoBank member to come to this. So can you talk to that for just a second too?
Yeah, so our Nexus conference, which we are going to have, we've endeavored to do it annually, but for lots of different reasons, COVID probably being the last one, we haven't always been able to do that, but we are scheduled to do it again in February of 2024 at the Gaylord Hotel in Colorado, just right by the airport.
Perfect.
And it is our user conference. So we do want all of our ortho users to come join us and to get insights. And we do try to have a great collection of industry speakers and
Hmm.
folks that are on the cutting edge of what's going on in ortho, having them all in one place, in addition to other folks' practices that are working with us in that capacity. It's really just a great opportunity to have some great folks all together to learn from what we're seeing and doing and being
Yeah.
able to share stories and strategies and help each other continue to grow.
Yeah, that's perfect. Great. Dan, it has been just a delight. I always enjoy talking to you. And I know when we get a chance to just talk on the sidelines, you are just a hoot. I love listening to your stories and you always make me laugh. So, I look
Well,
forward to that at one of our next meetings.
me too, Jill. No, and this has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate it. And this is a great podcast. I'm an avid listener, so thank you so much. It's an honor to have been
Yeah.
part of your show.
Oh, thank you. If because you've been listening, the way I like to finish up my podcast is with a little speed round. So are you ready for the challenge?
I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be, Jill.
All right, coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee. I have a complicated relationship with caffeine, but for right now, it's coffee.
I love that. I have an addictive relationship with coffee.
And that's
That
part. That's
that
part of the competition.
that is the complication right there. Do you have a favorite book that you're
Favorite
reading?
book? I do. So I've read it. I'm not reading it out. So Moneyball by Michael Lewis
Hmm.
brings together two of my passions. So big baseball fan, sadly a New York Mets fan, and also, as we talked about earlier, analytics.
Hmm.
So it was really about the beginnings of introducing analytics into baseball. So for those that haven't read it and are sports fans or data geeks like Jill and I, it's a great read.
Perfect. I love that. All right. Favorite outdoor activity?
Really just working outside in the yard. I like to mow my lawn and do the edging and keeping everything nice and neat. One of the cool jobs I had in my career, I got to be a groundskeeper for the San Francisco Giants for 5 years when I lived in San Francisco. And I just love getting out there and cutting grass and just all the things that come with that.
That's
So
awesome. So you're that neighbor, the one that's got like the really cool patterns, like the grass is going all the really cool ways and the edging is perfect. And then I'm the neighbor next door that's
as long as there's no follow up questions, let's say yes.
okay, no follow up, promise. Let's see. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be?
Yeah, I think just being there for my family and my friends, times good times, bad times, just being consistent and being available. And that's really important to me is being there for the folks that mean the most to me.
Yeah, that's great. And then the last one, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Mm. I've been fortunate in my life. I've had a lot of great, smart people around me all the time. This is probably sound a little silly, but one of my mentors that I worked with over in Ireland, he was a really big influence. His name was Crosby Burns. And he told me, Dan, whenever you're in doubt, just do the right thing. And I
Mm,
know that sounds cheesy, but it's
no.
amazing how often that really comes in handy, which is we can make everything seem complicated. We can make everything seem dramatic. It's really not that hard to just do the right thing. And
Yes. Oh,
that's
I love that. I love that. What a great piece of advice. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. And I look forward to seeing you at one of the conferences coming up.
me too, Joe. My pleasure. Thank you so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.